Okay, so in this video, I'm going to cover offset function. There are a lot of cases where you could use offset function, but I'm going to concentrate on practical cases where it's difficult to substitute it with a different function other than offset. First of all, let's just start by talking about what offset function does, just to understand how the function works. The way offset function works, if I just do equals offset, you basically give it a reference point. So for example, I can click on this cell, see this C2, comma, and then you give the number of rows of offset. So for right now, I'm going to do 0, comma, and then you have to give it the offset column. So I'm going to do again 0 for the time being. And then we have height and width, which are optional. For now, I'm just going to skip those. So if I just hit enter, see we get the same value as we get here. So far it's similar to just linking to the cell. Now, however, we can use this row and column offsets to basically offset the cells. So if I change this row offset, which is the first one, to 1, see it basically moved 1 from that initial cell to this. If I change it to 2, it's going to move 2 down, which is going to take us here, and so on. So we can move rows, we can also move columns. So if I do 1 offset for columns, so now I'm offsetting 2 rows, 1 column. So if I hit enter, I got this because my starting point was this one, and then I got 2 down, 1 right, so I got to this. You can also do negatives for these. So if I do -1 instead of +1, then it's going to go left. So we went 2 down and 1 left. And if you do row offset negative, it's going to go up. So that's how this works. So let's just go to 0, 0 again. So that should just point to the same cell. Now let's just do some of these optional arguments. So if I do comma, see it has height. So if I do something like 5, now it's going to convert it to a range of 5 cells. So the height of the range is basically 5. And we started with 0, 0 offset. So we basically start from this cell and stay in that cell. And then we do 5 height. Now we could still do an offset. So let's say we do 1 row offset right there. And if I hit enter, you'll see that we still get 5. But we start that from this 1 down because we set to offset 1, and then we get 5 as a height. And you could do that same offset with columns as well. So if I do 0 offset for rows and do 2 for columns, you'll see that basically we moved 2 columns right. We stayed in the same row because we did 0 offset, and then we got 5. So let's move this to 1 column offset instead of 2. And that now should give us these. Now we can also use this final argument here, the width of this, which basically you say how many columns it needs to grab, right? So if I do something like 2, you'll see in addition to getting 5 down, it's going to do 2 columns right. Now again, that starts with this offset of 1 column to the right. So if I do 0 offset for columns, it will start by pointing to the C2 cell in this position and then do that 5 and 2, which means it's basically just going to give us this. So basically the end result you get out of this is a range reference. And in this case, because we're just applying in the cell, we just get the copy of those in here. So now let's see some use cases for this function where it would make sense. So this was mentioned by one of the viewers of the channel. So let's say we have this offers coming in and we want to see the difference between the previous one and the next offer. The way I could do that, I could just go here. The regular way to do this would be, let's see this minus this. So I'm taking the difference between the new offer and the previous offer. Right now, it's going to give us negative 380 because the previous offer was higher. So if I drag this formula down, I'm basically going to keep getting the difference between the previous and the new offer like this. And then if we drag this one right, we're going to get a value error here because we're trying to get the difference between this and this, which is fine. The issue with this is that if you want somebody to be able to add something to the middle of this, and we had an offer in the middle that was skipped at some point, if I go here and add a new line, see what happens is that if I add the new offer here and enter some number, this doesn't update the way you would expect. See, if I drag it down, this is good. That links to the previous cell. But if I look at this one, see, instead of this linking to the previous one again, it no longer does that. So it's still linking to that cell 2 above. So to avoid this situation, we can get back to where it was before. And I'm going to change the way I did this. So for now, let's get rid of that value. Let's take the current row cell, which is the B3, and then compare it to offset from the current row, B3. And I'm going to do the row offset to do -1 to go 1 up. And the column offset would be 0, which essentially is going to give me the same results. But right now I'm using offset function to say from the current one, go 1 up. So with this, if I drag this formula down, and we could still drag it up and we'll get the same value error we were getting before. So now if I go in the middle and add a row, and we basically just enter some information, and I'm going to drag this down. So if I check what happened now, see, this is still doing the difference between this one and this one, so 116. And this one now is doing the difference between these two, see, 405. So it automatically adjusted because our offset function is linking to the current row. And by adding a new row, it's not breaking the formula. So this way, it's more dynamic the way it works. And then if you didn't want this value error, you could handle it using some sort of if error function. And say if you get an error, maybe do a 0 or leave it blank. I'm just going to do a 0 like this. So here we go. We can also, I guess, make this look pretty, but there we go. Now let's do another example of this. We have some input. We have the total sales per month, and we're adding new sales for every month going forward. Now we're trying to get the total for last 12 months. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to basically try to get the last 12 results. So if we keep adding new months, it should dynamically just get the last 12. So if I just try to get the last 12 months total right now, I would do equal sum and then go and highlight 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And that should give me the last 12 months. Now the problem with that, if I go here and add, see, that's the total. If I go here and add another data point, this is not going to adjust, so it's still going to refer to the previous, whatever the numbers are. The way we're going to take care of this is by using offset function again. What I need to do, I need to get a range that's height 12, but I need to figure out where to get that range from. So for example, if I was doing this starting from this point, I would do equals offset, and then the reference would start from here, from that B2, comma. Then I would say to offset rows, so I have to figure out to offset enough to get to someplace in this area. For now, let's just do something like 20, comma. The number of columns I want to offset is 0, and I want to have a height of 12. To get 12 months. So right now, if I do this and hit enter, see, I get 5 because I did offset 20 that went a little too far. So I'm going to go back to this and try to offset this a little better. So let's try to do something like 13. And now we have 12 results here. So let's go check. So this should be See this latest one. And then if I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, I got that 52,671, which is the first number. So that gives me the range of the last 12 cells. Again, this is still not going to be dynamic because if I, for example, go ahead and delete this line, you'll see it will just not give me that one because it's still linking statically to that same thing. I'm going to undo that. The way I'm going to make this dynamic is by changing this 13 to a function that's going to give me the correct number instead of that 13. And that will vary depending on how you want to do this. So assuming that you're always going to be having some values in this column, we should be able to get to the number we need by using counter function. So if you don't always have values in the middle, you could use like array functions with max. I have done videos how to get the latest non-empty cell. If you want to watch those videos, you can see how you can do that. For this one, I'm going to try to keep it more simple. So I'll just go ahead and do a counter function. And I will basically just refer to this range starting from this second cell. And I'll just drop the end row reference for now and close parentheses and hit enter. See, I got 25 total. So the 25 means we got 25 data points right now. So we have 26 rows, but 25 because I started my range from the second row. So we got 25 data points. So if we keep deleting this or adding this, so for example, if I delete one, see that will adjust to 24. And if I add one, it's going to go to 26, etc., etc. At this point, I want to now use that in my advantage. So if I wanted to get that, remember, I don't need 25. I need this 13. To do that, I need to basically take that number that I have and subtract however many months I want. So I want the last 12 months. So if I take this number and do minus 12 from that number, which is the last 12 months, we will basically get that 13, which is the number we need to be offsetting by. But now it's going to be more dynamic because if I delete a line from here, see, it will adjust automatically to 12. If I delete another one, it will adjust automatically to 11. And if you keep adding them, it will also adjust automatically. So at this point, I can just copy this, hit escape, go back to my formula and replace this 13 with that counter minus 12. And if I hit enter, I'm going to get exactly the same thing. So I'm going to delete this. So that still gives me from that 52,000 up to that 40,000 all the way down, and it gives me 12 months. So now let's go ahead and delete the last data point here. So if you look here, this adjusted. So the latest one now is 57,307, which is this one. And then if I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, that should be the first one that we see in this range. And if I delete some more, so let's say I delete all of these, see, this will adjust again, and it's going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2. So it's starting from this one up to the latest one. So the final thing we're going to do here, I'm just going to undo all those deletes I did, is simply just take this offset function and put it inside of a sum function to just give us the total. And you could do this the same way if you wanted the average for the last 12 months or something like that. I'm just going to hit escape and copy paste the same thing. And I'll change this function from sum to average using that same offset function to get the latest 12. And we'll get both the average and the sum. So we got the latest 12 right now, like this. See, 580,000. So let's go and add another one, right? So if I add another one, now this should change to the latest 12 month from here. So now it should be picking up starting from here and 12 months back. So if I go back here, see, it says 827,000. So if I just manually compare this to check that it's accurate, I'm going to do equal sum and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. If you look, that's the correct number. So we got the latest 12 automatically without having to adjust anything. And finally, we can make it a little more interesting if you want some way for somebody to select how many of the latest you want in this calculation. I want that to still show up in here. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to use some trickery with number formatting. I'm just going to type 12, and then I'm going to go and do some custom formatting for this. So I'm going to go to format, go to number, and use more formats and custom number format. So here, I'm just going to give my own formatting. I'm going to do something like latest. I'm going to put this in quotations. Then I want the number, so I'm going to do a pound key here. And then I'm going to do another quotation and do space and type something like months. Quote again. See, it says latest 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 5 months, whatever that is. So this is the beginning part before the number. Then we have the number, which is the number of months. Then I have this space months. After that, I'm going to apply that. See, we got latest 12 months. And the advantage of this is that this cell essentially is still saying 12. So if I just go here and type 3, see, it's going to just format it as latest 3 months. And if I do 12, it's going to be 12 months, which means now I can go inside of my formula. Instead of saying 12 here, I can just link to this. And then also for this 12, I can link to this cell that says 12. And the same I would do for this one. So instead of this 12, I'm just going to link to this cell. And instead of this other 12, I'm going to link to that same cell. And right now we're getting the latest 12 months. So if I go update this to 6, we're going to get latest 6 months automatically. Let me just delete some of this so it's easier to keep track of this. So right now it's doing latest 6 months. So from here up to here. And if I do 3, see, it updates. It's basically adding this 3 together. So it's getting 160,000 and a little extra. And if you do 12, you get latest 12 months. So now we have this dynamically updating situation. And we did this using, again, offset function. In this case, I'm using countif function together with offset. All right, so now I'm going to go back to that old first thing to show you how we can handle this situation using an array. So I'm going to go back here. So the thing we're trying to do here, if you remember, we were basically getting the difference between the new offer and the previous offer. So here, I want to convert this to an array formula. So let's see what challenges we're going to have when we do something like this. So what we're trying to do here, we're trying to basically get the difference between the next one and the previous one. So if I just take the formula we have right now, copy it, paste it over here. So if I want to basically drop this formula down, I'm going to do B2 through B to refer to the whole column. And then I'm going to do B2 through B for the second one to also refer to the whole column. Now, if I hit enter right now, I get a 0 because I forgot to do the array formula. So I'm going to do Command-Shift-Enter or Control-Shift-Enter to add the array formula wrapper so it knows this is supposed to be an array formula. And I'm going to hit enter. And you can see I get this reference error. And it says the result was not automatically expanded. But if we add more rows, it's still not going to expand it because what's happening is we have a mismatch of range sizes that's never going to fit. So we have B2 through B in here, and then we have this other B2 through B, which we're offsetting by -1. We're going 1 up, and it's basically ended up going 1 up and then going all the way down. So we have 1 row extra for the second range or array compared to this first one. So we need to somehow match the sizes for both of this. So what I'm going to do a comma here, and I need to add the height. So we need to say how many rows do we actually need in this array. So for the time being, let's just add 20 rows. And as you can see, when I did that, now it's not doing what it was doing before. Let me actually clean this up a little bit, so make this spreadsheet a lot smaller so you can see what I'm about to do. So we got, as you can see, 25 lines now in this spreadsheet. So if I needed to do that number right now to have the correct number, this should have been really 24. Basically, starting from here all the way down, that would be 24 lines. Now, how do we get that 24 dynamically? So what we're going to do, we're going to use this combination of functions. One is called counter. So I'll just, for example, select, let's say, this column. Doesn't matter which column you do. If I do this, see, it gives me 9. So counter only counts the cells that are not blank. So it's giving 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, I also need to count this blank ones. So what I can do, I can use this count blank function. And if I select the column A again, and I hit enter, see, I got 16 blanks and 9 not blanks. So now if I just combine those two together, and I'll take the count blank and add counter to it, so that will give us the number of rows we have in this particular spreadsheet. So if I go here and add, let's say, 5 more. If I go here and take a look, see, it's 30 because we have 30 rows in the spreadsheet. Now I want one less than the total count because of the headers. So I can take that and do -1 to get to what is 29. Now, if I go back to having, let's say, 25 rows, see, it gives us 24, which is basically the number that was here. So now I'm going to take this formula without the equal sign, copy it, hit escape, go back to this one, and replace this 24 with my count function that counts how many rows we have in the spreadsheet, and we do -1 to offset to that 24. So I'm going to take that, remove this formula. So right now we have a formula that will automatically offset this as much as we need. So if we add 5 more lines, as you can see, no problem. It works the same way. And if we delete some lines, it will also just adjust automatically to adjust our range sizes. And finally, to fix this part, this is good, but we probably want all of these to be blanks. So we need to add some sort of statement to say if the row to the left is blank, then just leave it blank. So let's put an if function around this. So I'm going to go inside of here. I'm going to put this inside of the array formula. See, this is the parentheses for array formula. This is the parentheses here. So I'm going to do if b2 through b, if that equals to double quotes, meaning blank, comma, then let's leave the value in our cell blank, so double quotes. Otherwise, comma, I'm going to do what we used to do before, which is this if error function with all of this offset and everything else. I am going to need another parenthesis here in the end to close that if function that I just opened. And I'm going to press enter. And there we go. Now we have our array formula that's giving us these values. So now if we delete this column, we have this new column. And the difference now, when I add a new line, I'm not going to need to drag this formula down. It's going to happen automatically. So let's say I go in here and we add another line. If you look here, see it automatically adjusted. This is the difference between these two. This is the difference between these other two. And we did that by using this height with the offset to make sure that our second range is now matching the first range. And that's a good trick to use if you like array formulas. And the final thing I'm going to talk about here about offset function is that you can create a range using an offset function by giving it the first cell and the last cell. And the reason that could be useful is when you want to say, add up everything starting from this cell that's below this line and go up to this cell that's above this line. Now, the reason you might need to do something like that is because if you just use a regular sum formula here to just sum up these cells over here, like this, if you go here and add a new line above this, see, that's not going to adjust to add that to your total here on top. So now if you have new numbers up here, see that new number is not a part of this total. So I'm going to undo that. So that's the reason you might need the offset function to instead start from that cell above the range where you could potentially be adding a row. So what do you do instead of this F16, which is the starting cell? You can replace it with an offset function. And then you give it that starting point, which is right above this cell. I'm going to do comma and do 1 down, comma, and 0 columns offset. So this will accomplish the same thing. It's going to go from F15, 1 down through F16, and it's going to use it as a starting point for this range. So if I hit enter right now, it should still give me 271. Now I'm going to do that same thing. Let me make this uppercase. It doesn't really matter, but it looks better that way. And I'm going to do that same thing with this F20. So instead of linking to this last cell, I'm going to go to F21 minus 1. And that too is going to happen using offset function. So I'm going to do offset and then do F21. I'm going to type that because that's the cell that I'm currently in, comma, and then do -1 to go 1 up from the cell that I'm in, comma, and 0 columns offset. So by doing this, I'm building my own range for that sum function. And if I hit enter, I'm going to get that same 271. The difference now, if I add a row above this and do some numbers, see that automatically updates and adds up to the total. And if I add something below, same thing. It's going to adjust and it's going to add to the total. So if you're interested in more about this, I have a video about an invoice template. I'll link in the description so you can watch more what kind of tricks you can use if you're trying to do something like this. But that should give you an overall preview how we can make offset actually build a range for us. And that's a few different cases where you could use offset function. If you have any other favorite uses for offset function, let me know in comments. Other than that, thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.